Right, games in Unity tend to have a script that oversees the whole operation of the game, and it's quite often called game control, and so we're going to do the same thing here. So up on the main, I'm going to create a new game object, and I'm going to call it game controller. Right, now this game controller has no purpose apart from to hold a script to control the game. So I'm going to add a script, and I'm going to call it game control. Now this game control script has got two purposes really. The first purpose is to spawn apples at a regular rate, say once a second. The second purpose is to have a countdown timer which counts down from say 60 seconds to 0, and when it reaches 0 it says the game is over. Okay, so let's do the spawning apples first of all. So if we edit the script, so here's our outline script, and the first thing I'm going to do is to create a new public variable, and this is of the type game object. Okay, something that appears on the screen and takes part in the game, and I'm going to call it Apple. Right, it's the same name as in Unity, but it doesn't matter because we're in a different environment here. Now this whole thing is to create a new apple every second. So this is spawning. Now we can't tie up the whole computer waiting for 1 second between apples. We'd have no time for anything else. So we have a special function that will deal with this called a coroutine. Now a coroutine is one where you can suspend the coroutine, get on with something else, then come back to the coroutine and then do another bit of code. And you know a coroutine because it always starts with I enumerator. So there we are, I enumerator. And I'm going to call this one spawn apple. I open up the curly brackets, press enter a couple of times and close it. Right, so the purpose of this is to spawn apples, that's what it's called, and it's going to do this in a loop. So I'm going to start this loop with the word while, so that's the operator while, which means it's going to carry on as long as a condition is true, and here's the condition. Right, so what does this mean? Right, read the exclamation mark as not, so while not game over, in other words while the game is still going on, and these are the things that we do while the game is not over. Now notice that this is in red. That means that Unity is saying I have no idea what you're talking about with this game over, so we have to declare it up here, and this is not public, it's private, and it's something that can be either true or false, and that's known as a boolean or bool, and this is game over. You might be wondering about the strange capitalization here. It's standard practice for simple variables to be given a lower case, and for more complex variables like objects be given uppercase names, not upper class. This capitalization here is to say, well, this is the start of a new word. This is known as camel case because it has humps in it. Okay. So now it's quite happy with game over. In the start, we're going to set up our initial position. We're going to say game over equals false. Okay, it's not over. Right, so the first thing we want to do in this loop is just to wait for a second. And this has got a strange syntax. It says yield. Now this means we're going to suspend the coroutine for a bit, and that's going to be defined by this return new wait for seconds. Okay. And we're going to wait for 1 second. So we need to make sure that it's float because it's expecting a floating number. So we're going to put in an F there, which means this is a floating point. So it's going to wait for a second and get on with whatever else the computer needs to get on with for that second. And then it's going to return to the coroutine. And we're going to create a new game object. And we're going to call this new Apple. You can call it anything you like, really. Okay. So we're going to spawn something here. And we use this rather posh term, instantiate. Okay. And we're going to instantiate an apple. We're going to assign it to this game object, new apple. Right, now we need to set where this new apple is going to be. So if we just go back to Unity, we have an apple on the screen here, and we want it to appear above the screen. So let's move it up a bit. So we don't want it to appear in the middle of the air, we want it to appear up there. So let's say 7. 7 would be nice. And then we don't want all of the apples to fall down the middle of the screen, we want it to be random across the screen. So from say between, let's say -5.6 up to say +5.6. Yeah, that'll do. So -5.6 to +5.6. Right, so this is how to create a random thing. We're going to assign this to a vector 3. We're going to call this APOS. It's going to be a new vector 3. Right, so random numbers are really important in computer games because if everything was so predictable that there would be nothing in the game. And Unity has a random function built into it. And we've got lots of different options in random. We want to select the range. So we're going to do -5.6. It's expecting it to be a floating point number. So I'm going to put an F. That's the minimum. And the maximum is going to be 5.6 F. Right. So that'll generate a random number between -5.6 and +5.6. And that's going to be put into the X value, the horizontal value for this vector 3. We've decided that we're going to spawn it above the screen at 7F. Now this is the Z value, which is irrelevant, but we're going to put it in as 0F. Right, so that's going to be the transform position of our new object. So I'll put that in. Right, new apple.transform position equals a pos. Right, having put that in, the apple will fall as expected. Right, so what I need to do now is to actually start that coroutine. So down here we've got start coroutine. And we put spawn apple with its brackets and then close those brackets. Right, so as soon as the game starts, game over is set to false, and then it's going to start this coroutine spawn apple, which is going to go round and round and round, yielding for 1 second as it goes round, as long as it's not game over. Let's see if that's been written properly. So we'll just test it, and it's happy with that. That's good. Let's go back to Unity. Now we've got our apple up here, but this apple is no good. What we have to have is a reusable component. So what I'm going to do is to drag this apple into a folder called prefabs. Let's one in there already. Doesn't matter. So, and then you'll find in your prefabs folder you've got one called Apple. Now if you have a look at this game control, it's expecting a game object, and we're going to use this prefab, which has already been a ready-made component. We're going to put that in there, and will that work? Will it spawn apples? Let's check. That was our first apple. There they go. Look, ooh, apples coming down from the sky. And right, ooh, we can collect some, and some we miss. So we're catching some apples. Now the problem is it's a game, but it's going to go on forever because we have no way of ending the game, which will be the next thing to look at. So let's just save that as far as it goes.